Live from the Grove in New Haven's Ninth Square, this is Where We Live. I'm John Dankosky. From Eli Whitney's Cotton Gin to the travel shopping site Kayak, New Haven has long been seen as a hotbed of innovation and entrepreneurship. Now, having Yale here doesn't hurt, nor does the easy train access to Boston or New York. It seems, though, there's something special happening in New Haven, though. Something that the state is paying attention to. In just a few years, the Grove has gone from a startup co-working space, drawing together startup businesses and freelancers in a spirit of collaboration, to being part of a state-sponsored hub for a new innovation ecosystem idea. It's been a little over a year since Governor Malloy announced Startup Connecticut, an effort to support entrepreneurship in the state, looking to network existing companies and encourage the start of new ones. Now, we talked about this topic a few weeks ago on our program, but today we've headed to the source. Coming up on Monday, the next phase of this project here in New Haven launches just around the corner. The Grid is an entrepreneur-led startup venture itself. This will be one of 4 hubs of innovation in the state. Today, Where We Live, we'll talk about startup business, the city of New Haven, the man who runs a CEO boot camp. And if you're an entrepreneur, maybe thinking about a startup, there's still time to make it down here to New Haven. You can maybe spend the day at this cozy co-working space, The Grove, right on Orange Street in the Ninth Square. We're joined in a panel first by Slate Ballard, who's co-founder of The Grove. And we've spoken with him on the program a few times, but it's good to be back, Slate. And again, we were here a while ago when the Grove was brand new, and we're really glad to see how it's grown up. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and thanks for having us here. Maybe you can describe, first of all, what exactly the Grove is and how it has grown since the first time our listeners may have heard about it.
Yeah, so the Grove is a co-working and collaborative space here in the heart of the Ninth Square in New Haven. And it's a space for freelancers and independents, small nonprofits, entrepreneurs to come together and have a space to work and really create community and networking, collaboration, build on their ideas and grow their businesses and their impact in the city and the state and the region. So now when you guys were here last, we were a little tiny startup. We had 1,200 square feet of space, and I don't know how many members at the time, but probably under 10 or something like that. Now we've got around 100 people working out of the space, 4,000 square feet in this location, and on Monday doing a ribbon cutting for 6,000 more, and just really growing a lot and creating some new and exciting initiatives.
And we'll be talking about that space that's just around the corner here in a moment, but talk about this neighborhood, because the other thing was when we came here and Project Storefront was just blossoming, there was an attempt to try to get more business down here. There were some great existing restaurants and some places to live, but it needed help. There were a lot of vacant storefronts. What's happened since?
Right. So since then, I mean, we've gotten a lot of new spaces here, such as Greenwell around the corner, great coffee shop that a lot of us had coffee from this morning. The Elm City Market has blown up in a big way, and there's just been a lot of activity of people coming down here, some shopping developing. Project Storefronts has run 3 or 4 iterations down here in the Ninth Square, which has been really, really helpful to increasing the rent, or I mean the leasing space that's here and filling up storefronts and stuff like that. So it's a really vibrant area of New Haven.
It's a vibrant area. It's a growing area. There's a lot of great restaurants, coffee shops.
Yep.
We've done live broadcasts from Firehouse 12, which
Yep.
is a bar and performance space that does jazz right around the corner. We've talked quite a bit about 360 State Street project,
Yep.
which is one of the biggest, most successful new real estate ventures in all of New England, and it's right here around the corner too, and that's feeding into all this as well, right?
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
And we've got one of the best rock clubs of Cafe 9 just around the corner. So it's a great little neighborhood, and you're a big part of it. So before we get talking about the Grid too much, this next iteration, how did the Grove attract all this attention from the state, from the city of New Haven? How did you start to grow from that little tiny startup into this much bigger thing? Was it about just getting the word out? How did this happen?
Well, I mean, in one sense, I think we got lucky. The other sense is I think we developed a really great community here. I mean, I got to give it up to the members of the Grove, who make up a very diverse population of New Haven, all of which are very active, not only in New Haven, but also in surrounding cities around this area. I mean, we have people that commute up from Norwalk that have commuted down from West Hartford, and we really just have a really dynamic and diverse group of people here in New Haven, some movers and shakers, and people that really are invested in the city and believe in the city and want to make an impact both in social impact with we have some great programs working with youth empowerment and leadership in the schools and mentoring. And then we have some great community organizers and people working in neighborhoods to make change, as well as a lot of startups and entrepreneurial ventures. So I think we started to draw a lot of attention because of this diverse and collaborative community that we created.
You and Derek Koch, your co-collaborator here on this grid project, who we'll be talking to in a moment, were interviewed for Fast Company magazine, and you're giving them some ideas about why New Haven is a tech hub, why this is such a great place, and all the things we mentioned, right, are there. But you talked about this do-gooderism, this idea that there is just something about sharing, having sort of an open source mentality of not being siloed and saying, this is mine, but I want to share this with the world. That is something that's different. Does it have something to do with a nonprofit spirit here? What is it exactly in the water in New Haven that makes people want to do good as opposed to, I suppose, do evil?
Yeah, I mean, this is true. I do think it has to do a little bit with the nonprofits that are here. I think it has to do with a growing trend in social entrepreneurship. And, Yale is a big proponent of social entrepreneurship. Quinnipiac University is doing a lot for social entrepreneurship right now, and I think that has a lot to do with it. And I think people are looking at their work and saying, I don't just want to make money, I want to make an impact. And I think that that's just something that our culture is seeing, not only here in New Haven, but around in other cities around the U.S.
We're talking here today on Where We Live at the Grove. It's a co-working space in the Ninth Square in New Haven. It's part of a real burgeoning neighborhood, and it's going to be part of even a bigger project that we're going to talk about next. If you want to come down and join us, please do. We're right on Orange Street here. Derek Koch is manager of The Grid, an innovation ecosystem hub here in New Haven. He's also founder and CEO of Independent Software. Welcome back to our program, Derek. Good to hear from you again.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
So maybe you can explain what this next stage is. What exactly is The Grid?
So the Grid is really a grassroots team that's formed around the focal point of the Grove. You spoke with Slate just now about the power of the Grove and how it's really been an important element of the community. And what's really important to us is that it's a focal point. So it brings out investors, it brings out freelancers, it brings out startups. And so the Grid is really a way to build on that. The community's been doing this work for a long time. Folks like Slate, myself, John Cipher, who's going to be on later. And so as part of that grassroots movement and working on projects like Startup Weekend collaboratively, we began to get the attention of people who were thinking about the issue from a different vantage point. The state of Connecticut started to work on a initiative called the Innovation Ecosystem that you mentioned that is intended to create kind of a support structure for entrepreneurs and really intended to provide structure and help for companies that we want to have in Connecticut.
When you talk about support structure, I mean, what goes into a support structure the startup business needs?
Right. So we think about it in terms of 5 different elements. One is space. So the Grove is obviously key to that, and the expansion space that we've got working on for Monday is an absolutely great asset. But the things that go into the space are also important. Things like access to capital, and that can be large amounts of capital, but it can also be small amounts of capital, like our innovation voucher program. We also have mentoring and education, which is a key part of the entrepreneurial voyage. In addition to that, talent is a really crucial element, bringing talent, software developers, engineers, graphic designers, different folks who work on innovative companies, bringing them into a space like this and developing their talent is really crucial so that they can work on startups. So those types of programs, space, community, talent, education and mentoring, and capital are really the structure that we want to try to build, and we are building today, and we're doing a great deal of it here at the Grove.
So that's coming up on Monday, the February 25th. There's going to be a ribbon cutting ceremony, and you're calling it the Grove 2.0. The Grove is still going to be here, right? But it just expands in scope.
Well, I guess Grove 2.0 is a bit of a misnomer. It's an informal term that's come up. We really think of the new space as the Grove, really just an extension of what's happening here. And I guess what's really exciting and important to us about the space is that the Grove, as it stands today, serves a lot of different people with unique meeting room space and space for hot desking for freelancers. But the new space will also add in mentoring. It'll add in a space that startup teams who are coming out of accelerators like TechStart or BetaSpring can use as a landing pad to continue working to have a space that fits their needs. And so that's a little different than the existing Grove space. So it's all the Grove, but the new space serves a different set of needs, I guess is the way we'd put it.
I'm sorry to ask you, what is hot desking?
That's a good question. It doesn't involve putting something hot on the seats.
I was
You
just
can't sit down.
I was worried just from a liability standpoint, frankly. But no,
Yeah.
explain it. What exactly?
Hot desking basically means you've got a room with desks and spaces, and whoever comes in and shows up first, sits down in their space, works. When they leave the office for the day, somebody else comes in and plugs into that same space. So it's dynamic.
This is why these folks get money from the states. They call it hot desking. We used to call that dibs, right? You walk in, I got dibs on the desk. I got there first. So we're going to talk more about the space that's coming up and that you're going to be launching on Monday. Mike Piscatelli is here. He's Deputy Economic Development Administrator for the City of New Haven. And obviously, the city's played a huge role in this. Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So explain exactly how New Haven is tied into all this, because we've talked a bit about startup and innovation hubs already on our program in the last several weeks. And we've talked about how the state of Connecticut is investing heavily in this. So how is the city taking part?
Okay. Well, the city's role is on a number of fronts, and by and large, it's contributory. So in some cases, we lead efforts to help with the placemaking of the Ninth Square. As you had mentioned earlier, we feel it's very important that it's not only trying to create jobs or recruit new businesses to come to New Haven, but to grow organically. And in this particular space where we have a lot of innovation, collaborative work environments, the place is very important. So we invest in project storefronts, as you said earlier, which is unique for a city. I mean, we have a store which we rent out and make available to people to actually start their businesses. This is one of the true success stories of that. We've also made a real push on the land use side to create more housing in the district. So when we mentioned 360 State Street, put over 1,000 new housing units online. So you've got a really true urban, dense, walkable neighborhood here. And that allows a collaborative environment to really.
And it's all right here next to a train station. It's all right here next to an ability to quickly get to Boston and New York. It's kind of amazing.
That's correct. And what we try to do is make available any city resources we can to help the community grow on its own. And I think what you see here in and around the Ninth Square, it's truly the human energy and the community energy. And we're happy to support it, but it truly leads itself to the next step and the next place. As Derek mentioned, with the Grove growing, if you were to walk down here on a regular day when there's no radio show and there's just school buses or kids and a regular work environment day, the energy that comes out of this place is very, very special. And for us as city officials, we're really proud of the fact that you could walk in and you could just see the city grow and create and have a sense of resiliency on its own that will create jobs and sustain the city going forward.
It's so interesting you talk about that, because I think the story, for people who know the story of New Haven, the story has so much been this top-down idea, whether or not it was the great plan of the 50s and 60s that kind of ripped apart the city and reformed it in other people's visions, whether or not it's the collaboration between the city and Yale University, which again has done amazing things, but has come from literally the ivory towers to the street front. This is something a little different for New Haven. This really seems to be ground up.
Well, think of it from a different perspective. I mean, if you look at these national statistics, the nation has to recover 10 million jobs to get back to pre-recession levels. So there's no one strategy that makes this work. And we work on all these platforms. We still do big things like trying to take out Route 34 and attract a big company like Alexion to New Haven. But at the same time, that strategy alone won't get us anywhere near where the state needs to be going forward. And I think the reason why the grid and the Grove expansion is so important is because you're really going to start to see an ability for companies to grow organically, get out into the city, take their own space. You've seen some of that already. And that base of economic expansion is what will really help the state recover.
And talk about something like the Alexion deal. Again, a big employer down here. A lot has been made about how the state has tended in the past to be very friendly toward very large corporations, the ones that will bring hundreds of jobs at a time. And sometimes those are good gamble, and sometimes those are poor gamble. Sometimes they come in, take a lot of state tax dollars and leave, and sometimes they put down roots and they stay. Why, in the context of everything that's happening with startup business, is it important to have, say, Alexion just down the street in this new 34 corridor that is going to be changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it speaks a lot to the collaborative approach of the way businesses are starting and the way talent is driving innovation. And that means you need to have people in a space that's proximate. So with the Alexion project, they're located now in Cheshire. It's a very difficult place to get to. There are not a lot of coffee shops around the Cheshire campus of Alexion. But what you'll see when a company comes down with 600 to 900 employees, and the companies that will want to be around Alexion, that you'll see this innovative spirit that germinates out into the neighborhoods and around. And I think that's one of the reasons why in this particular expression, the state grant also includes a section called a bioscience clubhouse, which is an opportunity to actually create collaborative space in the life sciences field.
So before we take our first break, I'm wondering if you two guys can chime in and talk about that, about the role that the city has played in all this, because I think that this municipal collaboration with the state and with local entrepreneurs is really key. It's not something we see everywhere. Hopefully it's something that we can get in other cities like Hartford and Bridgeport going. But talk about what's gone into that, Slade, and how that's worked for you.
Well, I mean, the city's been incredibly supportive of us from the beginning, from when we were in Project Storefronts to this space, to our expanded space. And I think, their role in just, mentoring and trying to figure out the best fit for us here and how we're interfacing with, city officials and alderpersons is really important. And they've all been really, really helpful to us throughout the last couple of years.
Derek, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Slate said, the city's been, throughout our journey, been definitely a great partner and has always been supportive, whether it's through supporting Startup Weekend and looking at that as a way to create a better community, whether it's through Project Storefronts or even through the Grid. They're a very integral part of what we're planning and doing with the Grid, and they're there every day doing work with us. So it's really great to have them supporting us.
And before I let you go, Mike, I guess I wonder if the city has long-range plans in these regards. You see the success of what's happened here. I mean, not so very long ago, the Ninth Square had a lot of, as we said before, vacant storefronts. You tore down the Coliseum, which is just down the block from here. And now all of a sudden the sun shines through, and there's not this enormous building getting in the way. It is a very, very different place. Is this something that is a model for other neighborhoods here in your city?
Well, there's no one template, but I think there are expressions of what's happening in the Ninth Square that will tend to grow out. You don't necessarily recreate it from scratch somewhere else, but I think the district itself is taking on a sort of critical mass that it will want to grow out. And we have some real exciting concepts coming online for the Coliseum site, moving out toward Union Station and the medical district. So it's getting out of, sort of the narrow Ninth Square. It's growing and moving a little bit incrementally out.
You say exciting concepts. Anything you can tell us about?
Not on the air today.
Not on the air today?
Because there's no camera.
They're not more surface parking lots. It's something different than that, right?
Right, and I think it has a lot to do with what's happened already. If you looked back when we started with 360 State Street, there was no market study necessarily or any empirical data that was going to say you could do 360 State Street and you could have an urban market and you could have a new coffee shop over here in the Ninth Square. This stuff tends to grow with some sort of on-the-ground organic energy, and I think you're starting to see that same sort of insight with the next couple of sites in and around the area.
Mike Piscatelli is Deputy Economic Development Administrator for the City of New Haven. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to continue our conversation here from the Grove in New Haven's Ninth Square. We're going to be talking about innovation ecosystems, diving into some local startups as well. Learn how CEO Bootcamp is helping entrepreneurs. You can email us where we live at WNPR. You can tweet us at where we live, or if you're in the neighborhood, you can come on down to the Grove and join us where we live.